Hello, Austin Top Guns. It's Jeff and Richard here for another podcast episode. And this is actually going to be really fun because it's not just Jeff and Richard, but it's actually one of the members of our group, Joel Ho. And Joel is the founder and president of Easy Prop Tax. He is a programmer slash business owner that has created a process for protesting your property taxes. So we're going to have a good discussion today, finding out a little bit more about the property tax process, why you should protest your taxes every single year. We'll get Richard's take from the real estate agent perspective as well. So guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's kick off. Let's start off with Joel. So Joel, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you founded the company, and then we'll get into more of the meat and potatoes.
Sure. So let's start with the why. So I came down to Texas in October 2021. My place was valued at $385. I basically bought it for that. And then a couple months later, TCAD tells me that my place is now $550. I'm like, I don't know much, but I have a finance background, worked in financial services in New York for a little bit, and then did some tech stuff afterwards. And I know that you can't do that. You can't have a 50% increase in 2 months. That's like what?
You are a financial genius, dude.
So yeah.
Well, if you can figure that out, let me know.
Yeah, I figured that part out. So I decided first year I'm going to fight it. Got my 550 back down to 350. And so I was like, I was a little lucky on the last 35,000 there. But then last year I was thinking to myself, hey, I can't do this for 4 properties and it's not sustainable because I'm spending, like say 20, 25 hours of property to make sure I get that savings. So then, okay, what can I do? And I decided I am going to create a system that at least I can do it use it myself and make sure that it saves me a lot of time. So I did it. And that's how this Easy Prop Tax kind of came about. And that's really been the story. This is the first year I'm offering this software to people, and it's based off of a way that usually the county is going to have a very hard time fighting.
Okay, very cool.
Awesome.
Tell us a little bit about the software and what it does. Let's kick off and just ask, should you, and I'll ask this of both of you, should you protest your taxes every year? Does that affect the value of your home? Richard, I'll ask you that question first.
No, they're actually had a text on Nextdoor recently that I was following in my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods, and they were talking about challenging their taxes and things like that, and it came back from one of the neighbors that you have to be careful about challenging your taxes because that is what your home is valued at. You don't want to impact the value of your home. The appraised tax value of your home has nothing to do with the market value of your home. So I, as a realtor for 11 plus years now, I fight my taxes every year. I do it different ways. Oftentimes I'm too busy it falls at my busiest time of the year. So oftentimes I'm too busy to do it in person. So that's why I'm interested in Joel's process here. But I do fight it every year, and I recommend fighting it every year so that you can keep your appraised basis as low as possible. That has nothing to do with the market value when you sell your home. So
perfect. Now, Joel, should I do this every year? Is it worth my time to do it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I would say in 95% of cases, it's worth it because if you're not fighting, they're going to be essentially raising the amount that you have to pay. And then it's very hard to get it back down after you've had that sort of raise because people, the boards who make the decisions, they do look at the trend of how your house has been over the years. And if it isn't good to let this stuff creep up on you because you're going to be paying thousands upon thousands like year after year. And it just keeps adding up. Really, if you think about it another way, it's like you're potentially like just because of this one thing that happens every year, you could be losing anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 over the course of just a couple years and over the course of 10 years. And you're essentially working for these guys for free. So why do it?
Yeah, not for free. You're working at a loss at that point. You're paying them, which is even stupider.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's walk through this process, Joel. Typically, let's say I wanted to do this all by myself. Without using your software, without using a service, what's the process I'm going to have to go through? The point that you made, okay, I'm doing this for 4 properties. I don't have the time to monkey with this. What's the process normally if I'm doing this on my own?
Yeah. The way that you want to win against these guys is the very most important tip is you want to use their comparables against them. So they're gonna have some houses that they're gonna say are like yours. And so your objective in the protest process is to try to figure out, hey, what's better about those houses than yours? Because if those houses are valued higher than yours, oftentimes it's for a reason. As in there's something about those houses that like it's newer, it's got more features, or there's something about those houses is making it so that house is better than yours. Because if it was lower than yours, then your value would be going down year after year. So they're always going to pick the houses that are better in some way than yours. So the trick is when you're trying to figure out that, once you figure that part out, it's like could be a house has a swimming pool, you don't have a swimming pool, so you have to, in order for that house to actually be comparable to your house, you have to subtract the value of that swimming pool. And then so you can imagine you do this for all sorts of things, like the kitchen island that somebody else might have that you don't have. Somebody else might have a newer house than you, and so because your house is older, it's less valuable. So all of those things, like when you list it all out, you have to essentially individually account for each one of those, and then you ideally you want to put it into a chart, so that way the board, they can see in their 7 minutes that they really have to actually look at what you're talking about, because they only really got 7 minutes to make a decision on what you're doing after they look at the evidence, and then actually do the paperwork on that, all in 7 minutes. So there's not a whole lot of time that they're actually spending. So you want to make it as easy for them as possible to understand. So you have to have a lot of data, a lot of pictures, and you want to have a lot of charts that they can see, hey, this guy's clearly done their research, and we should just go with what they're saying as compared to the assessor. Because remember, they always have a bias towards the assessor because they've been working with this guy day in, day out, literally all day, at least that day. Maybe they've been with him all week. So they're looking at the same person. So they get to know them and their working style. But you're coming to the situation, they don't know you, unless you show that, hey, I know what I'm talking about even more than the guy that you work with all the time. It's very hard to get a large win. It's easy to get a win. Anyone can get a win, but if you want to get a significant reduction, that's what you have to do.
So question about that, when you were talking about looking at their comps, that you're talking about their comparable properties.
Yes.
Are you able to request those comparable properties that they're looking at prior to your meeting with them?
Yes, and you should in fact do so. When you file your protest, at least in Travis County, there's a bottom the section of the protest, if you're filing online, where it says request CAD evidence. You want to make sure you have that checked. And what will happen is the second that you hit the submit button, within like somewhere around 10-15 minutes of that, it's on the same place you just submitted, you would be able to see a new option has appeared where you can find the evidence online. And once you do is you take that evidence and then you start looking at those properties and saying, what's really special about these properties? Why are these properties better than mine? In my process, what I usually see are 3 categories of adjustments that need to be made. One is somebody's house is newer or better. They're comparing a new house that's sold. Most houses that sell were either new or they're renovated, right? That's why they sold. As compared to your older house, you don't update your house every year, but they're always comparing you to the latest houses every year. That's already one thing you can fight on most of the time. Sometimes they'll actually be good and they'll have houses that really weren't updated, but that's very rare. The other thing they do is sometimes they will find houses in your area owned by people who are what I like to call weaponized seniors. So what they do is they find people that don't protest over the last 10, 20 years, probably because they have a senior exemption and a senior deferral. So they let their taxes ride up. And so these essentially, like their market value, let's say it's realistically it's 300,000. If because they didn't protest, it might have gone up to 600,000. And now eventually what happens is the value goes up so high, and then the county finds that and says, oh, look, here's a properly valued property. And then they're going to raise that value on everybody in the neighborhood. And what those people who let it ride up don't know or don't realize is when they have that senior deferral, they think, oh, I don't really have to pay. Yes, they don't have to pay at that point in time, but they're going to pay. At the point they try to sell the house, all of a sudden, all of the back taxes and all the increases catch up to them, and they have to shell out, let's say 20, 30, 40,000, could be even more depending on the value of the house and how much it went up, all in one go. So let's say if you were selling your house for 400,000, or let's use the previous example, 300,000, you might have 50,000 worth of back taxes accumulated because of the deferral over the last, let's say 10, 20 years. It just like it accumulated all that time. And all of a sudden you were expecting $300,000 and then you got 250. And after taxes, it's much less. So then the house that you would be able to buy based off that would be much less, and you wouldn't realize it until after it happened.
Now that's in the case of deferral, meaning because and just explain that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
senior deferral thing.
Yeah. So there's two things to be aware of. There's a senior exemption
Okay.
and a senior deferral. So the senior exemption, which is also known as the senior freeze, is where they essentially you can tell the appraisal office, and what
Taxing
they'll do
authority.
is they'll prevent any sort of, they'll freeze the amount that you pay for school taxes, essentially, most primarily. And that keeps a huge portion of the value, or rather the taxes, from going up. So that's one thing, that's the freeze or exemption. The other part is a deferral. So what the deferral is, you go to the tax office, and every tax office, and they'll let you say, hey, I'd like to, now that I'm a senior, I would like to not pay the taxes until either I pass away or I sell the house. And they'll say, okay, no problem. We'll charge you 5% interest on top of the taxes that you are supposed to pay every year, but you don't have to pay them until one of those two events happen.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, I think people don't realize that. They think, oh, I just get to stop paying taxes, and they don't realize that's accruing
Yeah.
over time. And then, yeah, you could put yourself into a really bad position, especially if your neighborhood declines. As it gets to be an older neighborhood, it could decline. And now all of a sudden you owe more money based on a fake number, basically.
Yes,
over
exactly.
time. So something that seniors need to be aware of in those cases.
Yes.
Richard, from that perspective, what typically are you telling your clients to do each year as they're going into this time period?
We have the senior clients I'm dealing. I think everybody focuses on that exemption as opposed to the deferral. But those that are looking at, just like Joel was saying, those that are looking at the deferral, I explain to them that deferral it's a deferral. It's gonna have to be paid for at some point, whether it's in the sale of the house or whatever. If they pass away, I mean, even if they pass away, if they're planning on giving the house to the kids or whatever their plan is, and we go through that and explain to them just what Joel said. It's, you are deferring the taxes, and there is a cost for that deferral, and it's going to catch up to you at some point. Whether, and some of them are like, I don't care, I don't have the money right now, or I want to keep my fixed cost or whatever it is, and go through that, and it's fine, and they do it that way. But it's really more, just like you talked about here, it's really more educating than just talking about what. I mean, every one of my clients is, what are your goals and objectives, and going through that plan. And I think we all work towards, I think universally, we all want to pay less taxes, pay our fair share, but as little as possible. And having those conversations with them. And then the other side of it too is the senior exemption leaves with the property. Basically, if the senior moves to another property, and so there's another component there of how that impacts the buyer and things like that when they're coming into that. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I think it's just education and understanding what their goals and objectives are. So,
and I would think that's something that I hadn't thought of before. But yeah, if you're buying a piece of property and you're doing some research behind the scenes on taxes, and it's owned by a senior that's got the exemption, you better realize that you're going to probably see a pretty rapid raise in your taxes. You're coming in if you're under the age of 65. So yet another reason why you need to be on this right away.
I mean, that's one of the things I do when I evaluate properties for my clients, is I look at the exemptions, and so what's the tax ramifications of that, and what the impact's going to be.
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
to think about. Yeah.
So Joel,
one other thing that consideration that plays into all this too, another side concern or thing to consider, is the homestead exemption. And so that kind of impact, especially what we went through in the last few years, where appreciation was going off the charts on every year. We had people that were seeing their home, because they didn't have their homestead exemption, they were locking into 30-40% increases on their appreciation, which kind of goes, it was scary, some of the things that was going on out there. And I'm like, how do you not have your homestead exemption? So that's a side conversation to this, but it does really play into your taxes and things like that too. And those are things that I constantly am telling my clients, make sure, and a lot of times I go through and check to make sure they're putting them in place. So just to have that too. But again, another topic that kind of goes in tandem with everything we're talking about here.
So Joel, let's talk a little bit about the software, the website that you've developed. How does that help somebody that's trying to do this research and be able to get their protest ready and everything else. How does that help? What does it cost? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So this is a $49 a year software. As long as you're using it for yourself, I don't care how often you use it. If you use it for 10 properties for yourself, then hey, that's fine with me. It's still $49 total. So it's $5 a property. Basically, what it does is you just have to, it's like TurboTax. You fill out a bunch of information. All the information comes from you. But as a TurboTax, at the end of it, you get a 1040, right? With this software, at the end of it, you get a protest document that basically details everything you put in. So it's just a couple Google forms that you fill out. And you basically like stuff like what's the square footage of your house? How many bedroom bathrooms? And then more detailed is, do you have, what are the features of your house that are, and like how good are they? For example, do you have a, what type of connections do you have? Do you have a road for your property? Do you have a septic tank? Do you have what sort of property in general do you have? Is it upslope or downslope from the road? Basically, I'm trying to capture as much sort of valuable information as possible about your property. And then what we'll do is we'll do the same thing for the comparable properties. Some comparable properties that are like yours from what the county presents to you as the best comps they have. And also you pick from their data set, because they'll usually give you about 10 to 15 houses. You want to find that essentially 3 that are like your house somewhat, and then 3 that are really far from your house. So we're talking like for example, last year, one of the comps that I used was a house that was sitting on a hill overlooking the surrounding valley with a lot that was 6 times bigger than mine. The house itself was twice as big as my house. It was new. My house was made in 1970, and that house had a swimming pool. And like that house was like the castle compared to my shack.
Dream home.
Yeah, pretty much. So what my software does is basically takes that information and then it captures it and it adjusts it down. So it just that house, that castle essentially gets reduced to a shack because I have a shack. So that's what it gets reduced to. And then the value is adjusted accordingly. So then you can get an indication of, hey, this is where it should be. Now, the trick is, because if I'm using the county's houses that they picked, now they can't go back and say, oh, let's try again with something else, because they picked the houses in the first place.
No, you chose those.
Yeah, you chose those. So now you're stuck with them. And that's how I've been able to get reductions, by using their data against them. Because the thing that you have to remember above all else is they have the burden of proof. So sometimes the board needs to be reminded of that. But what that means is you don't have to prove that you're right. You just have to prove that they're wrong. And if you can remember that one fact, it's going to help your protest immensely. If you haven't won before, that'll at least get you to a win. Now, how much of a win depends on how good of a job you do, but anyone should be able to win, because like you see all these guys out there, these property tax protest companies that they say they win a certain amount of the time. Hey, if I went by that, I'd won 100% of the time. It really doesn't mean much to win. Like anyone can win, but it's really the amount that you save that really matters. And that's what I think this system can help people do. It's to save time in preparing. And so, because it helps you actually do the preparation. So you don't have to like hunt around and try to figure out all the right words and everything. Like you don't have to spend time like trying to type out a 20-page report or something. It does everything automatically for you. All you have to do is put in your 1 or 2 best arguments. And then the rest of it is it's just data entry.
Okay, cool. And for somebody that says, hey, I'm too busy for this, what's the time commitment? And as far as the protest time commitment, what's your estimate as far as how much work I'm gonna have to do?
Yeah. You're probably going to have to spend about a half hour or so looking at the houses and picking the houses. Then you spend about an hour using my software, anywhere from half an hour to an hour using the software. And then you spend probably another half hour getting pictures of everything. So then you're looking at basically about a 2-hour commitment, and then you have the hearing itself. So that would probably, the hearing itself is going to be 15 minutes. You probably have to sit around and wait for a little bit, do some driving and all that. So the total time commitment is probably going to be about 4 hours. But then again, if I told you, hey, in 4 hours, it'll be $2,000 of your money potentially that you get back. That's $500 an hour, and it's after tax. It's double that, so it's essentially $1,000 an hour. Would you do it? Like most people would say, $1,000 an hour, I'll take it.
Yeah. On worst case, because I've talked to you about this, because as soon as I met you at our happy hour, of course I pummeled you with questions just because that's me. I realized I've used a service for the last 3 years, almost 4 years now. I would have used them again this year. And at the most I've ever gotten off was $50. And then I had to turn around and pay that $50 to the tax service. So what's the point? Yeah, I didn't have to do a lot of work, but they really haven't moved the needle. And my house has continued to go up.
Yeah.
You know, the assessment has continued to go up every year, and some years pretty dramatically, especially during 2020, 2021, where real estate prices were just going through the roof. I think 2022, I mean, I looked at it and went, okay, it didn't really change much, but they had, ratcheted it up so much the previous years. If I can spend 3 hours of my time and have a much better chance of actually getting some realistic numbers dropping, it's worth my time and my effort.
Yeah, and there's actually a huge couple reasons that you really should do it yourself and not use protest companies in general. And one of them is, first off, imagine like you are one of these companies that you've got a flood of people that all want their properties protested in a very short amount of time. So realistically, are you going to sit there for a couple hours like you would do with this software for yourself? Would you spend a couple hours on every property? No, that's not going to happen. They feed it into a data service, and then essentially they come out with some numbers on square footage. This is a $200 a square foot property, and then that's that. You're not going to get into details about what actual features your house has. It's not going to happen. What I've seen in practice, what this actually means is I've seen a leader of one of these companies, the CEO no less, go into a meeting, and they had one argument for a neighborhood, not an individual house, a neighborhood. When they lost that argument, because the board didn't buy it. I thought it was a decent argument, but the board didn't agree. And so they lost every house in that neighborhood. They lost 6 houses in a row. They were going on losing 10 houses. I just left at that point. That's the first thing. So they don't argue specifically for your house necessarily because there are just so many houses they have to do. The other part of it is, what these guys will often do is these companies need you in a way that it's really not quite right. What I mean by that is what they often do is they'll say, hey, Mr. Assessor, I got a list of 20 properties that you want to get through today. How about we sit down and we take a look at them? And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, I can see property A that actually looks like fairly valued. What do you think? The assessor is of course going to say, yes, of course it's fairly valued. And then the assessor is going to say that property B, that looks like I could see a reduction of 10 or 20,000 there. So there's no real actual formalized argument. They're not really doing the work that you would expect they do, but they're essentially like, without saying it, they're trading houses. So in other words, like the more clients that these guys get, the more people they can essentially sacrifice to get other people a result. So basically, maybe half of their clients might get results on any one time. Now, I'm not saying this is the case for every single group out there. I'm just saying this is something that I have seen happen where there's properties that are traded in some manner, essentially
It's
without
the common practice.
Yeah,
Well,
it
funny.
happens.
I had a good friend of mine that when I first started in the financial industry, he had come from the insurance industry and came into the finance, and he was an insurance assessor. And he had a little side business when he started where he basically worked with personal injury attorneys, and he knew where that assessor, where they would, about how far they could go without having to get approval. And so these attorneys would hire him to go in after somebody was in an accident or something like that. And just, I know I can go up to this number. And so he would go in and negotiate this type of stuff. So sounds about the same thing. Okay, I know he can probably adjust maybe 10 out of every 20 houses. Okay, so I'll give you this one for this one, and I'll give you this one for this one. And
yeah, because from my point of view, I've gotten a reduction on every property. So I don't understand how there's a lot of these properties where they're like, oh, we couldn't really get a reduction this year for some of these guys. And then a lot of times, the reductions I'm getting are like, on average, it came out to about 33% of whatever the county wanted. So if they want $100, they got 1/3 off, and they only got 2/3 of what they asked for, essentially. So like when people are telling me, oh, I got like a few $100s off, like it seems that just doesn't seem right to me if you're using some of these companies, because you should be doing much and getting much bigger reductions, like where you're actually supposed to be valued. It goes to me to show the kind of weakness inherent in using these guys, because they just can't know the property as well as you and know the neighborhood as well as you. And those are the kind of the biggest factors in really determining like what the value is.
Absolutely. It's amazing to me. What's our timing here? I know we're coming up to a deadline. What's our timing on this, Joel?
Yeah, May 15th is the deadline for filing your protest. Oh, another thing is there's a separate set of companies, some of which may have some overlap, but all they do is they say, oh, we'll file your protest for you. Filing takes 2 minutes. I literally did this. I tested it out like a couple days ago. It was like 1 minute 42 seconds. That's all it takes to actually file your protest. Anyone can do it. That is the absolute first step. And you should not pay anybody to file your protest for you. You just go online to your county website, you plug in the PIN. If they give you one, for example, for Travis, that you get a PIN, you plug the PIN in, and then you enter in some information. If you don't know what to fill out, then hey, there's videos online explaining to you what the options are. I put some up. It's very easy. It really does take only 2 minutes.
Perfect. Awesome. So your website is what, Joel?
EZ Edward Zebra proptax.com.
Okay. And we'll include that in the show notes underneath this as well. Go to Joel's website. I'm just looking at kind of his steps on here. Sign up for the newsletter because he's providing you with really good information, and you do some office hours, correct?
Yeah, I do office hours every Friday. That's actually probably the best way to get information. I've been a little slacking on the newsletter, so not so much there, but I'll admit, but office hours every Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Any questions you want to, if you want to do a filing with me watching you do it, so you make sure you do everything correctly, more than happy to do it. It's completely free. I don't charge for anything other than the use of the software. And that's, as I said, like $49 a year.
$50. Yeah. Well, Joel, thank you so much for coming on today, my friend. We need to get this out to our group as quickly as possible, which we will. Folks, take advantage of this. And Joel is a member of the Austin Top Gun. So let's help support his business. Certainly, let's see if we can save a whole bunch. And if we can, let's make sure we're giving him some props and giving him some testimonials on that too, so that we can share how good it worked. I will be doing this. In fact, I'm actually starting this process right alongside, and I'll share with you guys as I go through the process to see how it worked and what the end result was for me. Joel, thank you for being on, my friend.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
All right, guys, this is going to be more and more of it. So if you are one of the members of the group out there that is interested in sharing your story, talking about your business, talking about some subjects and topics, we're going to be reaching out to several of you. But if there's something you're interested in talking about, let Richard or I know. Just contact us through the group or contact us directly, and we'll get that taken care of. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys back here the very next time.
Thank you.